All right, again tonight, Sarah Carter has unearthed one of the most revealing pieces of information in the ongoing saga between Bruce Ohr and Christopher Steele. Now, for nearly 2 weeks, we have been showing you dozens of communications between Ohr, who was once the fourth highest-ranking person at Obama's DOJ, and ex-foreign spy Christopher Steele. Now, these new texts, emails, handwritten notes have provided evidence of a seedy, unusual relationship between these two, including a coordinated effort to push the contents of Steele's dirty, unverified Russian dossier all throughout the DOJ and the FBI. And just tonight, Sarah Carter has uncovered one more handwritten memo from Bruce Ohr recording a phone conversation that he had with Christopher Steele. In the memo, Ohr writes that Steele is, quote, very concerned about the Comey hearing and afraid they will be exposed. Now, this is on top of the text that Sarah first revealed right here last night, showing that Steele was concerned about whether or not, plural, firewalls will stay intact ahead of Comey's upcoming hearing. So you have Christopher Steele worried about being exposed, and for good reason. After all, it was Christopher Steele. He worked on Hillary Clinton's op research team in 2016. He put together the Clinton bought and paid for dirty Russian dossier full of Russian lies, salacious, unverified, uncorroborated. Even Steele himself wouldn't stand by it. Under oath in Great Britain, he said, well, it may not be true at all. It's raw intelligence. It was Christopher Steele who then used Bruce Ohr to spread all this Russian propaganda throughout the highest levels of our federal government and to you, the American people. And now, thanks to the reporting also tonight from Catherine Herridge, we know it was Christopher Steele who was leaking the contents of his phony dossier to your gullible news media in this country in the fall of 2016, all at the behest and request of Fusion GPS, who, by the way, was not only being paid by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. We now know Fusion GPS. Oh, remember that Russian lawyer? The one that was in the infamous Trump Tower meeting? Oh, yeah. She was paying Fusion GPS. And by the way, don't forget Simpson met with the lawyer both before and after that meeting at Trump Tower. And we know Christopher Steele and Simpson were clearly pushing their Russian lies. They all knew it was total BS. By the way, that's why Steele wanted the firewall. That's why he's scared to death he will get caught. Now, in a moment, Sarah Carter and Catherine Herridge will join us for a full report. But first, let's take a deep dive into President Trump's very important security clearance review and several current and former high-ranking officials. Now, yesterday, the president stripped top-secret access from Comrade John Brennan, and for good reason. Now, last night, as we demonstrated how Brennan clearly violated the CIA policy, it says, quote, in the case of former CIA directors, the agency holds that their security clearance and renews it every 5 years for the rest of their lives. However, that requires former CIA directors to behave like current CIA employees. Well, that's not Brennan. Now, he also used his security clearance to validate conspiracy theories that he's regularly pushing and getting paid for on MSNBC, and leaking, of course, sensitive information to the general public as it relates to the dossier through Harry Reid, then to a letter public that's made to Comey. But the mainstream media, they don't care about the truth or any of this. Some are now actually claiming John Brennan's First Amendment rights are infringed. He's on TV 24/7. What are they talking about? Take a look.
This is a dictatorial exercise of power that should frighten and call on all Republicans to say, Mr. President, you cannot do this. You are trying to inhibit the free speech of people who may be in opposition to you.
To use this kind of punishment to chill speech is a violation of the First Amendment.
I mean, this is a striking move towards authoritarianism. You know, this is what dictators do. They shut down the press, they shut down dissent, they jail their opponents. Or in this case, they steal their security clearance.
What happened here was a pure authoritarian act from an intemperate president who wanted to punish one of his critics. Nothing more, nothing less.
The White House is threatening him right now by taking away his security clearance. And they've already
great. It doesn't influence my commentary.
But they've already taken it away from John Brennan. So doesn't that say to everybody else, shut your mouth?
This is all dumb, ignorant, and frankly, patently absurd, as John Brennan continues to spew his anti-Trump hatred all over conspiracy TV, MSNBC. Oh, one other important point. A security clearance, for those of you that have never read the Constitution and claim you're a journalist, It's not a constitutional right. It's a privilege. And according to the U.S. Supreme Court, Navy v. Egan, a U.S. president has the authority to revoke any clearance with or without stated reason. Currently, the administration is reviewing the status of 9 clearances. Now, with the help of our good friend, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, let's break down why each of the people you see on the screen should be in serious jeopardy of losing their secret access. Tonight, we start with James Clapper. Without a doubt, he should be stripped of his security clearance as soon as humanly possible. He, like Brennan, also misuses his clearance to validate and also monetize his hatred of President Trump every time he's on TV. Brennan on Conspiracy TV, MSNBC. Clapper doing the same thing on fake news CNN. Take a look.
The values, standards, the institutions that I and others spent the major part of our professional lives defending and upholding are under assault by our very own president. That I really do wonder whether the Russians have something on him.
I really question his ability to, his fitness to be in this office. And I also am beginning to wonder about his motivation for it.
This past weekend is illustrative of what a great case officer Vladimir Putin is. He knows how to handle an asset, and that's what he's doing with the president.
Now, that's not the only reason Clapper should forfeit his clearance. Now, before his time at fake news CNN while serving as the director of national intelligence, well, Clapper was accused of leaking sensitive information to his future employer, CNN, the company that employs him now. And let's not forget when Clapper lied under oath in front of Congress. Take a look.
Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
Now, of course, we know that the exact opposite is true. The NSA was collecting the data. He knew about it. Next, let's turn to Jimmy Comey. Yeah, his access is already gone, but he's still eligible for future access. And as Greg Jarrett lists multiple reasons, Comey should be permanently losing his eligibility, including his improper conduct in the Clinton investigation, the fact that he stole government property. Remember the handwritten memos about the president? Remember he leaked that potentially classified information, those memos, to a professor friend to give to the New York Times. And he also likely misled the FISA court about the Steele dossier that he was supposed to verify and never did. And then he lied about that during his book tour. We'll remind you.
You called the dossier unverified, salacious. Why did you use that to the FISA court to ask for surveillance for Carter Page? Not only use it, but you led with it. A bulk of that FISA application deals with that dossier. Why?
Yeah, that's not my recollection, Brett. And I don't know that the FISA application has been released. My recollection was it was part of a broader mosaic of facts that were laid before the FISA judge to obtain a FISA warrant.
There was a lot more than the dossier in the FISA application?
My recollection was there was a significant amount of additional material about Page and why there was probable cause to believe he was an agent of a foreign power. And the dossier was part of that, but was not all of it or a critical part of it, to my recollection.
Unreal. We now know the dossier did, in fact, make up the bulk of the application. It's an irrefutable fact at this point. Next up, well, let's look at Peter Strzok. He was also fired for improper conduct. His extreme bias, his willingness to act on that bias is a reason alone. He should never have a clearance again. We also have his mistress, Lisa Page, the one-time FBI lawyer, also complicit as it relates to Strzok's bias and his attempts to, quote, stop it, meaning stop Trump from ever becoming president. And then, of course, the insurance policy. And then there's Andrew McCabe. He was fired for lying. He was also involved in signing off on that fake FISA application that willfully misled FISA court judges, by the way, and the American people. And we got Sally Yates, also fired for insubordination. She signed off on one of the FISA applications. Susan Rice, she lied all over the place, over and over, about Benghazi when they knew better. A matter of national security. Really? Knowingly? Lying? Get rid of her clearance. Next, you got Michael Hayden. Greg Jarrett is calling his security clearance case, quote, questionable. But remember, Hayden is currently employed by CNN as a talking head. And finally, we end on Bruce Orr. He was once the fourth highest ranking member of the DOJ before being demoted twice. Why? For failing to disclose his wife's employment at Fusion GPS. We can add Christopher Steele to the mix now. In fact, Orr was actively working on an investigation into Trump-Russia collusion while his wife was being paid by the Clinton campaign to dig up dirt on Trump. Orr appears also to have filed a false financial disclosure report in order to prevent the government from knowing the true nature of his wife's work. In moments, Greg Jarrett will join us with more analysis, but without a doubt, the Trump administration was right in the case of Brennan and now should revoke all of these clearances as soon as possible. All right, now we turn to our daily roundup of the most deranged Trump haters. And tonight we're featuring this absurd comment. Yeah, once again, Conspiracy TV, MSNBC. Take a look.
I like the idea that you know, you use the examples, the bad example of like what would be the core that would say it was okay for Donald Trump to dissolve media institutions because media institutions are super unpopular. I would like a pollster to test this question. How many people in the Republican Party think that it would be okay for Donald Trump to dissolve their own grandparents? I'm virtually certain that if it was a Donald Trump related question, you get like 10% that would be like, Donald Trump has the power to do whatever he wants, including kill my parents.
And today, President Trump gave his own take on the media's Trump derangement syndrome, tweeting, quote, "There is nothing that I would want more for our country than true freedom of the press. The fact is that the press is free to write and say anything they want. But much of what it says is fake news, pushing a political agenda, or just plain trying to hurt people. Honesty wins. Maybe that's why you've made us number one, and we thank you for it." Expect the media's rhetoric, by the way, to get worse and worse as the most important midterms of our lifetime, well, gets closer. We're only 82 days away. Now, this week, Congressman Keith Ellison, he won the Democratic primary in his race to be the next Attorney General of Minnesota, but not without some serious controversy. Now, Ellison's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Karen Monahan, is accusing him of serious domestic abuse, a claim backed up by Monahan's son, who took to Facebook and wrote that Ellison put his mother through, quote, pure hell, and that he had personally seen hundreds of threatening text messages from Ellison, and even a video of Ellison, about 2 minutes long, assaulting his mother, including one instance where he allegedly dragged her by her feet off the bed, all while screaming and cursing at her. Now, these are charges that Ellison vehemently denies, but the DNC is now investigating these claims, and Robbie Mook of the Clinton campaign saying, don't campaign with this guy. We'll keep you posted as this story develops. And finally tonight, we have another update in the trial of the century, Paul Manafort's 2005 tax case and bank fraud case. Well, the jury, they wrapped up day one of deliberations without reaching a verdict. The jury did, however, submit 4 questions to Judge Ellis, including one asking him to define or redefine reasonable doubt. That may be a good sign for Manafort, but I caution you. Remember, you can't glean too much from a question of a jury, and over 90% of federal cases result in a guilty verdict. The odds are not in Manafort's favor. Keep in mind, as the media storm ramps up on this case has nothing, zero, Mr. Mueller, to do with Russia. Zero, Mr. Mueller, to do with any collusion. Zero, Mr. Mueller, to do with the 2016 campaign. And zero to do, Mr. Mueller, with Donald Trump. And this all comes as the wife of one of Mueller's targets, George Papadopoulos, who was just on with Tucker, is calling for her husband to scrap that plea deal that he made with Mueller and sue the government. We'll let you know if Papadopoulos takes his wife's advice. And by the way, takes on the aggressive tactics of Team Mueller. A lot of ground, a lot of news we're breaking.